This is the Rugby Ascendant Podcast with Envia Velman and Chris Wyatt.
It's the Rugby Ascendant Podcast with Chris Wyatt. And as usual, Chris has gone out of his way to please me by wearing his Blue Bulls top there. So I'm very happy to see you. I know you're a Stormer by heart, but a Bulls supporter, a closet Bulls supporter. Hello, Chris. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I have no choice but to wear a Bulls hoodie today. After Monty Lubbock's performance last week, I have to hide in shame.
You know what? I actually made a point of saying that the guys are not being fair to Mani. What Mani needs is a proper kicking coach. And I've said it now. Rossi has got a coach for every single thing under the sun, except a kicking coach, which is the most glaring problem that they have. So why not get a Naasboot or a Bram van Straten or anybody else who knows how to kick and, to teach people how to kick and get him to spend some time with Mani. Mani's overcomplicating things. You think back to Percy Montgomery, how bad he was when he started kicking. Simplified it, shortened his run-up, and he just was the metronomical after that. Never missed a kick ever again, basically. Why can't they just go to the trouble of doing that for Mani?
Well, those are good ideas, but my recommendation when you get the Lions kicking coach, that is, of course, Mornay Sten. He's more recent, just retired, close to the game. And Mornay, boy, whatever you want to say, Mornay, when he first came up, was non-existent on defense. That was one of the big knocks against him. I mean, he pretty much just watched guys run by him. I'm embellishing a little bit, but that was a knock on him. But as his career progressed, he became a very good defensive player, and he distributed the ball very well. But his kicking game was never suspect. It was always brilliant. I mean, he won the 2 British and Irish Lions series, for us. So I think Mornay Sten is who they ought to get. They ought to bring him up. The Bucks need it. And when I was joking, look, Monty distributed the ball very well on the field. I mean, he played very well, made some great plays, but his kicking game was just so sad. It's heartbreaking.
The point of him is he's a mental player. So if he loses confidence, it deteriorates quite quickly. And they need to address that. And the way to address that is to make him sure that he's not going to miss his kicks. I know the other answer to that is probably getting someone else to take care of the kicks. But we like our flyers doing the kicking. So then help him to do the kicking anyway.
Well, it's not just like them. You need that flexibility. I mean, it's okay to have a fullback who can kick, or even a winger who can kick, or even strange cases like Ruan Pinar, a scrum half who can kick. But you have to have a fly half that has the ability to kick. If you don't, you're at a disadvantage if you start taking injuries. You really need that. Plus, his location on the pitch, you need that person who can distribute the ball from that position at the right moment, at the right time, particularly these days with the 50-22 being such a huge part of the game. You got to have a fly half that can kick the ball. And Monty is great at that. He can do a 50-22 brilliantly, but he's got to get his head in the game. And I've been saying this ever since I saw him come over from the Sharks to the Stormers. I mean, why was he taking 90 seconds to kick the ball? It does. And we're talking about kicks right in front of the post too. Just get up there. What is he thinking, going through his head about, well, let's see, tomorrow I've got to hook up with my girlfriend, and just kick the ball.
Yeah, I agree with you. So, like I said, he overcomplicates things. So get that out of his head and help him. Like I said, it's interesting you mentioned the 50-22. Now, one of the things that Sasha was doing very well is kicking 50-22s, kicked an excellent one. And I think that's one of the most underutilized new rules that have been brought into the game. 50-22 is like getting a penalty. Just do it properly. A good fly-off can do that quite easily, and it gives you such a competitive advantage. I'm surprised that they're not using it anymore.
Well, it frustrates me to no end. I mean, a couple of years ago, when they first introduced the rule, we were testing it, I guess. It was when the USA side was playing Canada up in the Atlantic provinces there. They played Canada, and I didn't even know the rule was coming in. I hadn't seen the new rules proposed, and they kicked the ball and it goes in a touch. I'm like, oh, well, that's a mistake. What are they doing? We have a lineup. Oh, and then the announcer's like, this is a new rule just introduced, the 50-22. I'm like, what the heck is this? And Gary Gold was the USA coach at the time. So they had that rule. Then they had the rule that I hate. And that's when the ball is held up and it's a goal line dropout kick. The team that's on offense is really punished by that. I do not like that law. That is a crappy law. If the defense should be rewarded, but not to that degree. I mean, that's crazy. And we still have players that just like a bull in a china shop try to push themselves across with 2 people on them, and it's going to be held up. And that irritates me. That one I don't like. Gary and I kind of agreed with that. I was torn about the 50-22 initially because I didn't understand it. But then after watching a couple games, like, this is the best law introduction in rugby union in living memory. And, one day we're going to get such good fly halves who can kick a 50-22 any time of day that World Rugby will come back and not let us have it anymore. You watch.
Especially if the Springboks make good use of it, then they're definitely going to change it quite quickly as well.
That's true. If it becomes a weapon in the arsenal of the Springboks, it's definitely going to be taken away. Kind of like the scrum and, taking the mark for a scrum.
Just your, in a few brief sentences, your impressions of the Boks performance, the B team, if you want to call it that, alternative team against Portugal. What did you think of that game?
Well, the Bucks made 14 changes to the squad. We had 7 debutants come out. I was impressed by a lot of players. There's a lot of great praise from Makazole Mapimpi. Mapimpi had a good game, but he didn't have an amazing game. I like Makazole Mapimpi. He's a left winger. I'm a left winger, so I appreciate that. But I mean, he was handed the ball, and he's in the right place a couple times. So I mean, and so you got to admit that. So he had a great game. But I think in this game there were some really impressive performances. One of them I think was highly underrated, and that was Kobus Reinach. I thought he did a fantastic job at scrum half. RG Sneeman was my man of the match. He was just all over, just amazing. Jan Hendrik Wessels, there you go, Bulls. Great job out there. Good start for him. Andre Hugo Fenta off the bench, I think, was great. Elric Lowe off the bench was fantastic. And of course, an absolute sensation, a delight to watch. Sasha Feinberg Ngumzulu off the bench. Now, there's 2 people in this that have missed out for the next selection, and I think it's warranted. Evan Ruiz, and again, another stormer. So, I mean, I just have to sit here with my head in shame. Bizarre play, poor discipline, stupid mistakes at the wrong time. Portugal got their first try because he spilled the ball. I still don't see, I didn't see if it was ripped or he just lost it. But Evan Ruiz worked himself out of the lineup, and I think it was warranted. And the other is the aged Trevor Nkanye. I've still been puzzled why he's even in the Springbok selection. No disrespect to Trevor. I like him. He's been a great player of the years, but I think he's past it. Now, watch him come back and prove me wrong at some point. But I think his days in the green and gold might be numbered and coming to an end. So we'll see. But I thought this was a good performance, but there was discipline problems at times. And I'll attribute that to a mix of players that don't play together normally. They haven't played as a squad. They're all kind of thrown in the first time. And uneven performances by some key players. And like I said, Evan Ruiz at the number 8 should have performed better. We've had poor number 8 performances like 3 tests in a row with Quagga Smith there and now with Evan Ruiz there. So if Elric Lowe moves into that, I expect the next match, the number 8 position will go very well.
I was surprised to see Ulrich come on as number 8. I mean, he's a 7 at the Bulls. We've talked about this before. And he played very well. I quite liked the way that he played. And clearly, Rassie was impressive him as well because Roos is out and Ulrich is in.
Well, I agree 100%. And I've said that for a long time. I think Elric Lowe has the flexibility. He certainly has the body type. I mean, if necessary, you could probably use him as a lock. I mean, that's people going to say it's a stretch, but I mean, the guy has the body type. He's got the energy. I mean, he's a high energy guy when he comes in there. The only thing I worry about with Elric Lowe is sometimes he gets a little overexcited and he comes charging into a ruck, and I worry he's going to get a penalty or hit somebody in the head. But I mean, beyond that, it's just look. You could start him at number 8, and when we start the Rugby Championship, and I think we'll be in great shape there. A good job off the bench, a really good job off the bench, and then the guy who everybody wanted to dismiss because so many fans want Sanili Nohamba to come in the game. I'd love to see Sanili Nohamba come in. And get a jersey as a Springbok, and it should happen. But Morne Vandenberg was a bit of a surprise call-up for me, but I was actually impressed, very impressed. I mean, I nothing against him. I've always thought he's a good scrum half, but a couple years ago when he was new and fresh, and I was doing my play-by-play and color commentary, I get comments in there, oh, that guy sucks. He's terrible. I said, no, come on. He's a talented guy. Give him a chance. And he was great off the bench, really worked well with Vlaev. I think that was absolutely brilliant. Him and Sasha were a fantastic combination in that game.
Yeah, Krappie. His nickname is Krappie. So that means crab, you know that. So small crab. Talking about a guy with a lot of energy. And remember when we were sitting at Loftus and we were talking about Ruan Orkia, the guy with the diesel engine who never gives up. And you and I both felt very sorry for him after the URC final, remember, in that press conference. I'm happy for this guy to be selected. I honestly think he's the right choice. And I think the reason why he's selected is because he is an excellent line-out caller. And that seems to be a bit of a problem with Mostert now being injured and Loot being injured. Seems to be a bit of a problem there for the Boks. RG can do it, but he's not that good at it. It's not like a Victor Matfield kind of a line-out brain. And I think Ruan Nortje, to a degree, brings that kind of energy or knowledge to the team. And combining with Grobelaar that he plays with at the Bulls, that's probably the reason why they picked him.
Well, I can't disagree with you at all on that. I think your assessment's spot on. He's really good at that, and it's right that he gets a call. I think this is his first call-up, isn't it? I don't think he's been with the Bucks before. Oh,
2022.
sorry, he did come up 2022. That's right. Yeah, just briefly, but yeah, no. So I think it's the right call. Definitely hurting at the lock position. He's a good call up. But the thing with Rowan Nortje that gets lost is that a lot of commentators and journalists and supporters and fans get angry because Jake White seems to be in love with him as the captain of the Bulls. And a lot of people say he's not up to the task of being the captain. And we can argue that point all day long. And I think there's merit to saying he's not up to this, but that's a distraction. Let the guy be a lock. He's doing a great job. Let him perform on the pitch. I think if Rowan Nortje was relieved of the captain's position with the Bulls, his focus would be better, and he would be really one of the best locks in the world. I think he's on the verge of being that, but I don't know. To me, I'm not in his boots. I'm not in his mind, but it seems to me that the distraction of being the captain takes away from his game on the pitch. There are other people who could do that job on the pitch and not lose their focus. For instance, you could put Villy up there. He could argue with the officials all day long.
Yeah, he does anyway, whether he's a captain or not.
Exactly. He's arguing with the officials. He's always running over there. You might as well at least not get him admonished for not being the captain. Let him be the captain.
Well, talking about locks being made captains to the detriment of their own game. Salman Murat, I think, for me, is another example of that. Being made the captain of the Stormers, now being made the captain of the Boks. His game as a number 4 lock to me is a little, not suspect, but questionable. I'm not sure that he's really the kind of number 4 that we're looking for. He's not a Buffy, he's not an Eben. He did not have a great game on Saturday, and I don't know how much of that was to do with the fact that he was a captain, because he was very nice and polite talking to the ref. Which is a nice thing to have. Somebody said today on Twitter somewhere that he's a nice son-in-law, but he's not a nice number 4 lock. So that's probably what we're looking for there. I've got my doubts about him.
Another Western Province Stormer player, Salman Murat. I've always thought he's a decent player, but it doesn't matter whether we like him or not. The fix is in, the DNA, the lineage, the history. The media is and then the sorrow officials that be are talking up Salman Murat to make his way up to replace Sia Khaleesi. You can already see that. I don't think he's up to that. Sia has been a brilliant captain. Hey, for those who attacked me when I made one video calling out Sia for poor captaining during the British and Irish Lions series, are you listening? Once again, I'm saying nice things about Sia Khaleesi. People are selective. Anyway, not this audience, but I got attacked because I actually had the audacity to call out Sia for what I thought was a poor performance in the British and Irish Lions series as captain. But Salman is already being pimped to be the next captain, and I don't think that's a smart move. There are other choices that are better. Let him focus on being a lock and let him focus on being number 5 instead of number 4. I think I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and that's the problem we've got. We've got plenty of number 5s, not necessarily in the Boks at the moment, but in terms of number 4 across the country, there seems to be a bit of a shortage there. Even the Bulls, we talked about it today. Ruan Vermaak is not a great number 4. Eben is at the Sharks. You've got Salman at the Stormers. I can't remember who the Lions locks are. So that's a bit of a problem. The one guy I am excited for, not being a Bok yet, but Kobus Wiese returning from overseas, he seems to be the kind of a more stereotypical, or what the word is, prototypical number 4 lock. He seems to be finding his feet there at the Bulls. I'm looking forward to see what he can bring to the party.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I can't even think of who the lock is with the line. I mean, that's the problem right there. If you can't think of the names, then they're not standing out. They're not jumping out at you. And that's not attack on the Lions locks or any other team's locks. It's just a statement. If the name's not jumping out to you, that they're not standing out for some reason. But look, I mean, all things being equal, we still have a wealth of talent in almost every position and head and shoulders above the world. I'm sorry for the Irish fans. Those of you who are watching this broadcast drinking your Guinness, have another Guinness, relax. It's going to be okay. You're number 2 in the world, not number 1. And you've never gotten out of a quarterfinal in the World Cup. I'm just saying.
You're just stirring.
Stir that pot. Stir that pot.
Call a spade, Chris. I'm telling you now. Listen, while you're wearing your nice Bulls jacket, hoodie, lots of Bulls in this team, surprisingly enough. We didn't see that coming. Jan Hendrik suddenly becoming a prop and impressing at prop against Portugal. Not just with his scrumming, which I think was better than scrummaging, which is better than I expected, but the way that he played across the field, that's one of the reasons why I picked him. He's a footballer, fast, nibble hands, good at the breakdowns. He can basically do everything, and you have to find a place for him. And I said it somewhere else as well. Rather than have him or Grobler, have him and Grobler in the same team. And they're both exceptional footballers, if you want to call it that.
No, I can't disagree with that. Again, that's pretty. I think it was 7 bulls here. I'm looking at it. Maybe there's 8, but 7. What's more surprising to me is if there's any sharks in the lineup other than Etzebeth. Oh my God! Yeah. Oh, the sharks. We'll get to the briefly to the Currie Cup at the end, but oh man, what? I'm going to offer my services. I've got fresh pair of boots. I'm ready to go. Put me in, coach. The sharks need help.
Yeah, no. One thing about the Sharks, you mentioned Mapimpi earlier. Don't you think he lost maybe a yard or so in terms of just outright pace?
Oh, absolutely. No, I've said that for a couple of years. Mapimpi has lost a step or two, but he's still elite. I mean, he was just, his lights out, head and shoulders above everybody else. But, they've been talking about Mapimpi and how many tries he gets. But if you look at the try rate, it's impressive. But the guy that's really impressive is the guy I've been selling for a few years now, and that's Curtly Arnsey. Curtly Arnsey has, 16 tries out of 19 tests or something like that, or 17 out of 18. It's unbelievable. And he could have so many more. By the way, tough yellow card on Curtly Arnsey, but a deserved card. That was the right call. That was a crock roll. He shouldn't have done it. Little too much excitement in the play there, and he got a yellow card that was deserved.
It's 8 bulls. I counted it now while you were talking. So there you go. Not bad. The one bull that I'm very concerned about, and we've just touched on him before in terms of, shouting at the refs, is Willie Leroux. 2 concussions in less than a month. Now he's back again. I wonder if he shouldn't have taken a break maybe till later in the year, just to be safe. I mean, that's not the kind of thing that you play around with. I'm not there. I'm not part of the medical staff or anything like that, but just doesn't feel right to me.
No, I think it's a bad idea. Look, I think most people that follow me know that I'm a huge Willie Leroux fan, but I'm also honest about Willie. I mean, in the 2019 World Cup, I called him Butterfingers, because he dropped the ball. He dropped a more
broken arm. Yeah.
Yeah, no chicken wing arm there. He in his passes were always forward, and he looked so incredulous. I mean, it's because 5 meters forward. He looks at the official like, "What do you mean it's forward?" I'm like, "Dude, Helen Keller could see that ball was forward." No, but look, I'm a big fan. I've liked him since his days with the Cheetahs. He's a dynamic player, and I think he's really in his prime until that concussion. This is too soon. There's no need to bring Willie back right now. Let him. I know that Damon Willems is still out. That's one reason why we need a fullback. But let's give some other guys a chance here. We'll take a risk there, but let Willie recover. I mean, we can wait till the fall, Northern Hemisphere fall, the November test to have him come back and let him be fully healed. Once you get a concussion, the chance of getting a second concussion rise. And a second concussion, it's not a good thing. We've seen this in the National Football League, and then players have, traumatic brain injuries that accumulate over time. This is not a good thing. And Willie, I mean, I don't know what he's up to, but he looked like a 14-year-old learning the game of rugby, trying to make that tackle. The concussion is entirely his own fault. And it's too soon. He needs to take a break. I want to see him play, but he's going to come back in that game before it was only 2 minutes in. Well, anyway, it's too soon. It's too soon.
Something else, just talking about Curtly Arnsey, one of these things that stands out about him is the fact that he's so fast. But on Saturday, that Portuguese wing overhauled him. That guy has got a pair of legs on him.
Are you talking about Jose Pavio dos Santos, who got a brace of tries? I think you are. Jose Pavio dos Santos was unbelievable. He's the one that ran down the pitch, got that first try after Evan Roos spilled the ball, and then he's the one that got that last try, and he just smoked Curtly. No, that guy was amazing. How exciting for him. Portugal gets a test match. This is something I've been arguing about for years about how tier 2 and tier 3 teams, the minnows, so to speak, don't get a chance to play top flight teams. And this is a problem with rugby union. So that needs to be something that increases over time. And here we have a chance for it. We have Portugal come down, who was very impressive in the World Cup. It's a very different team. Only a handful of the players who made it to the World Cup are still there. And the coaching staff has changed, but they were just as impressive here. Look, I mean, I know it's 64-21, looks like a whitewash, but that's not really how the game went. It was Portugal dominated for the first 15 or 20 minutes, and then it kind of fell apart. And the Boks ran wild over them for a while, but then they came back later in the game and they never gave up. Very impressive. This guy, I don't know who he plays for on a regular basis, but I bet he's going to get offered a contract somewhere if he doesn't have a good contract, because and it wasn't just the tries, he was brilliant all day. He got so many meters, he put the ball where it needed to be. Brilliant play.
The nice thing about that test was the fact that there was no hostility from the crowd. We were all sort of, cheering on the Portuguese while we were playing against them. It was like the Irish teams where we wanted to, pulverize them or whatever. It was a nice spirit in that stadium with the full 42 odd thousand people in there. It was a different atmosphere. I quite enjoyed that.
Well, I have to say, listen, I mean, Bloemfontein, you're in the middle of nowhere. You're unloved. You're cold as bejesus in the wintertime, and you're hot as heck in the summertime. And people love to dump on Bloemfontein. But you know what? You guys are fantastic hosts for rugby. My first time there was the Tri-Nations in 2009 and Mornay Sten's debut performance when he scored all the points and we beat the All Blacks. And I'll never forget that day. I'd never been around 50,000 Afrikaners in one place at one time. It was awesome. And today the crowd's much more diverse than it was back there in 2009. People would come to the game, and it's just as enthusiastic, just as respectful, and just as exciting. Look, I mean, it's a long way to go to get to Bloemfontein to go to a game. A long way. I mean, unless you live in the Free State. But you know what? It's worth the trip. And they were a fantastic crowd, a great vibe.
But the interesting thing about the players not selected to go to Australia is that they've been released back to the unions, but with the proviso that they might be called up again when the Springboks return for the games against the All Blacks. Now that necessarily means that they have to go play for the Currie Cup teams again. Now the Sharks, you just mentioned the Sharks, they have been battling in the Currie Cup. They haven't won a single game. They lost against the Pumas at home. They lost with a Springbok laden team against the Griquas. They lost against the Lions at home as well. Now suddenly they might have to accommodate a bunch of Springboks. The Lions might have to accommodate a few. The Stormers have to accommodate a few, or the Western Province for that matter. Now the Currie Cup has now been hailed as the opportunity to build depth and test depth and everything. But now I've got these players being parachuted in and out and in and out. That doesn't really, give me any sense of comfort that they're not building anything. It sort of more disrupts the teams than anything else. What do you think?
I agree 100%. That's a major problem right now with Currie Cup. That's how we get one week the Lions score 1,000 points against the Pumas. The next week, the Pumas score 1,000 points against the Sharks. I mean, it's up and down. It's crazy. The Crick was impressed against the Sharks, and then they look pathetic against the Lions. At this weekend, it was a 25-13 game. And I got to be honest, I'm one of the biggest proponents for Currie Cup, and I defend it to the end. But this weekend, I might as well have just gotten sleep. 25-13 Lions over Griquas, 25-13 Bulls over Cheetahs, Pumas 31-21 over Sharks. The only game was any bit exciting was Western Province against Griffins. But I mean, when you play against 15-year-olds, what do you expect? I mean, that's easy to run over them. I mean, the poor Griffins, I really feel bad for that club. Poor Velcom. I mean, I think the whole purpose of existing is just so they can be a doormat for people in Currie Cup. I mean, they keep taking all their players away to bigger unions. But no, it is very much disruptive for these players to be parachuted in and out. And it's tough on the coaching staff. I mean, how do you build? Look, I spent 36 and a half years in the military, in the Army, and cohesion is important. And you have a team, whether it's in combat or it's in peacetime or it's a corporate team, a design team, or it's a sports team. You have to have cohesion, and you have to have esprit de corps. Esprit de corps comes from people knowing each other, knowing that if I'm Villy and I throw that ball to the wing, that Cheslam's going to be in a spot where that ball lands at the right moment, and he's going to catch it, and we're going to score a try. You only get that by playing together consistently, and that's important. The only place we're seeing any level of consistency right now where players are playing is in the URC, where they have an 18-game season, and it is broken up by the Challenge Cup and the Champions Cup, which I find very annoying, quite frankly. I think that disrupts the flow. That needs to be removed. They want to do that before or after the season. After the season's better. Don't do that during the season. It just screws everything up. But that's the Europeans. They can't get anything right. They don't know what they're doing. But anyway, so for me, continuity, esprit, and cohesion are critical, and that's what's lacking in the Currie Cup at the moment. And it's a direct result of what you just attributed to the fact that players are parachuting in, coming back and forth. I mean, the obvious answer was look at the Sharks with a Springbok heavy team going to Kimberley and getting beaten by the Griquas, who they're up 24-7. They just disappeared in the second half. Look, nothing against the Griquas. I'm a fan. I like the Griquas. I mean, anybody that's man enough to wear teal on a pitch deserves our support,
Like the Pumas wearing pink.
Well, yeah, there you go. There's another example right there.
Yeah. Talking about the Currie Cup, how many of the games have you watched?
Well, I watched pretty much all of them so far. There's only, except for the first two Griquas games, because it comes down to timing. Look, the priority for me is always test match, Springboks, and then from there, everything falls out from there. If there's something conflicts with that, then I'm not watching it. Then if it comes to URC and then Currie Cup, it's Stormers Province, and if anything conflicts, it falls off the table. And then I'll do the Bulls, and then I go down from there. So I missed the first couple of Griquas games because of a scheduling conflict and also other things going on. I mean, you may not have noticed things have been a little chippy here in American politics with a sad debate, then an assassination attempt, now a sitting president leaving the presidential race. I've been a little busy with those things too. So that's eaten up my weekends because they've all occurred around a weekend. So hey guys, hold your politics. I got rugby this weekend. You know what I'm saying?
I agree. Keep the politics. We're talking about rugby here. Now, I was at Loftus. I was watching the game, and you and I were talking a little bit. And I think, did you do call by call in that game?
I did, and I didn't think it was very impressive. The Bulls were fine, but the Cheetahs were very disappointing. I was very disappointed. Cheetahs.
But this one was why I wanted to ask you this. You heard about Springbok?
Yes, I did, and I'm not surprised, and I'm angry because this now gives South Africa a reputation of using performance-enhancing drugs. It's the second high-flight player that's tested. A fourth. Okay, well, I'm trying to forget the other two. Yeah, four now. I mean, this calls into question our reputation. And why are these players doing this? I mean, there's no need for that. I mean, that's just it gives you a marginal advantage, and it's not. Look, I get it if you're running against the Jamaicans, in the 100-meter dash. Now, I understand that. I don't agree with it, but I understand that marginal 100th of a second, which will make you a gold medalist. But that 100th of a second isn't going to win you a rugby game. It just doesn't do it. And I'm underselling a little bit, but the point here is there's no need for performance-enhancing drugs in our sport, and it needs to be clean. There's no need for this. People are always running around. They're always freaking out, especially in football. No racism, no racism. Yeah, fine, no racism. But how about no doping? No doping as well. That needs to be a big focus. And Sabu Nkosi's done. That's the end of his career. He's done.
It's a pity because Frans Steyn went out on a limb to give him another chance. I mean, he was basically a reject from the Sharks, a reject from the Bulls. And now Frans went out and stuck his neck out for him, and this is the way he's being repaid. And I was asking you the question about how much do you think it affected the Cheetahs, because it broke on Friday morning and they played on Friday night. And of course, he was one of the stars of the Cheetahs up to now. I mean, he scored several tries both games before that. And then suddenly you have to hear the guy was tested positive, because it sort of casts a dark cloud over everyone, doesn't it?
Well, listen, I was shocked, to be honest, that Frans Steyn went out on a limb to bring him in. I mean, after the way he treated Jake White and the Bulls, I was very angry about that. I mean, that was very juvenile. I mean, the man was given all kinds of chances. Even when he had personal issues, they gave him chances. He didn't show up. And then he spouts off and says this most vile language attacking his team when he went on the Barbarians tour. That was unfortunate. So the fact that Frans Steyn gave him a second chance, I thought was very magnanimous and very generous. And he's done. He's done. That's it. He won't be back. He won't be. I mean, he won't even be playing for Boland. He won't be playing rugby. He's done. 4
years minimum. I mean, that's the end of his career. I agree with you. But let's talk about the Bulls a little bit quickly. I spoke to Jean Tiet yesterday, Monday, about the defense and everything else. And it was quite an interesting conversation we had without him giving away too much, asking what are the plans for the USC, and he was sort of hedging it. We know what the situation is there. But I watched him on Thursday coaching the defense. It was quite an eye-opener to me. But there seems to be a general consensus that the Bulls are developing their attacking play that they've done in the UFC, but they're now also beefing up their defense. Because the Cheetahs scored many, many tries this season so far. I mean, they played against the Griffins, 82-something scoreline. They beat the Western Province at Bloemfontein. Did you hear, Chris, they beat Western Province there at Bloemfontein?
I heard.
Oh, you noticed. All right. And then the Bulls managed to keep the Cheetahs to one try. That says a lot for the defense. And the Bulls also had many, many opportunities that they couldn't convert, which I and the coach as well attributes to the fact that they've not been playing along together that long. And that as soon as they're going to start clicking, they're going to be a formidable team. What was your impression?
Yeah, the defense definitely shut the Cheetahs down. And look, we can't use excuses, Sabu Nkosi. I mean, that may be demoralizing, but that doesn't explain how a team that scores 10 tries per game comes out and gets one. I mean, that's there's a lot more to it than that. It has to be the Bulls defense that played a role here. And you can see it. The Bulls shut down lanes. The Cheetahs couldn't get loose on the wings. It just, I think the Bulls really did a good job there. But again, like you said, and this is the same thing I've said with the other Currie Cup teams, and not necessarily because players coming in and out, but players not playing together, it shows. It's not rust, but you don't have the cohesion, the silky smoothness of players knowing. Look, when you practice together and you play together over and over again, that's why championship teams aren't necessarily good at the beginning of a season. I mean, unless they're just thoroughly dominant, that's a different story. But a lot of championship, look at Munster 2 years ago. Munster was not impressive at the beginning of the URC season. They were okay in the middle, but they came together the last third of the season and they were world busters. They could beat anybody, and they beat the Stormers at home in Cape Town, and they earned that game. The Stormers, were beaten thoroughly. I mean, it's hard, it's painful to admit, but I mean, you got to admit the truth. So what I'm saying here is that the Bulls are not at that stage because these guys haven't been playing together enough, and with Currie Cup and URC and the test matches, it's back and forth. So will we get that level of continuity? I don't know, but it seems like the Bulls have picked a good coach in who they've got right now there. You've got a direct pipeline to this guy because the media, for some reason, are not focused on the Bulls in the press box, and maybe they should be because, look, the Bulls find themselves after 3 contests atop. Well, they're second because of points differential, but they're 13 points on the log, tied with the Lions. And I think right now they're better than the Lions. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. We got, 8 more games or something like that. But we'll see how the rest of Currie Cup goes. And I think that they'll build continuity, particularly those younger players, as they spend time together and the season progresses.
Yeah, this coach is quite an interesting character. I might be able to interview him this week still. It looks like it's being lined up. The stars are aligning. Maybe we're lucky. Because I said I wanted to talk to him about where does he come from. People are curious to know who this guy is, because when it was announced, nobody knew who he was. And there was a lot of, raised eyebrows and, sort of who on earth. And I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating, like you've said before. So it's going to be good to speak to him again. All right, Chris, another team that has not been exactly setting the world on fire is your team, Province. They've been battling a little bit. At least they managed to scrape a win against the Griffins. Anything less than 100 points against the Griffins, I think, should be considered a loss. I'm kidding. The Bulls didn't do that well either. The point is that Province is playing against the Bulls this weekend. So your take on Province's woes? Dobson doesn't seem to know what's going on there. What's wrong?
I could make the excuse that too much of our talent is up with the Springboks or injured.
Or in Pretoria.
But yeah, or been stolen by Pretoria, or the Sharks. No, but that's just an excuse. It's not getting done. This is a team that makes more errors. Well, I won't. I don't want to go into politics. I'll stop there. So it makes more errors than some political leaders do. Let's just say that the discipline is atrocious with the Province, and even in this game against the Griffins did very well the first 10, 15 minutes of the game. Province wasn't into the game. Look, there's a lot of excuses here that can be made, but some of the top Stormers players are playing for Province and they're still not getting it done. It's a bit frustrating. Now this game is at Loftus, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I guess I need to pencil that.
Saturday.
Yeah, well, I'll pencil that one in for a loss. No, I'm not. No, look, Province has got to get their act together. And people are critical of Dobson, but it's not Dobson dropping the ball. It's not Dobson rushing in from the side. You can coach players all day long, but it's like Gary Gold, the reason he left the Eagles, it was because we didn't get to the World Cup, but he had the best record ever as a USA Eagles coach and took them to great heights, an undefeated season one year in which they defeated Scotland. In fact, a top tier, I know it was their B team, but it's top tier nation. So, he left because the players failed to get it done in successive qualifications. They screwed up against Uruguay, and then they screwed up royally against Chile, in which a player entered the ruck from the side after we'd already won a penalty. The penalty was reversed because of what happened. And then they screwed up in the Red Posh tournament, but Gary Gold left. So I don't blame Dobson for this. Players need to be disciplined. Discipline is something you have to have in the sport of rugby. And as a soldier, you can't be just running around shooting at everything. You have to have fire discipline. You're doing dangerous things. And that's the same thing on the rugby pitch. It's not a weapon, but when you're acting foolishly and entering a ruck from the side, or you're doing croc rolls, or you're just, not paying attention and the number of offside penalties against Western Province it beggars the imagination. Get your head in the game. It's not that difficult. And here's something that really irritates me too, is when the ball is kicked on a box kick and players are just kind of like slow stepping, walking away. No, you need to get back and get on side. This is a problem with Province, and it needs to be cleaned up. People can blame Dobson for it, but at the end of the day, it's the players on the pitch that have to perform. And I'm talking about players that aren't playing in their first Currie Cup match. You know what I'm saying? So this is inexcusable. And particularly guys who've been playing 3 or 4 or 5 years with Province shouldn't be making mistakes like this, because it just tells me they're not serious about the craft, and that's very annoying.
Yeah, I think you're too lenient on Dobbs, in my honest opinion. I think it starts and it ends with the coach. Think about, would Rassie allow that? Would Jake allow that? That kind of a lackadaisical approach. There seems to be a sort of a theory floating around that Dobson might be a bit too chummy or pally, too friendly with the players. You can't be the good friend one day and be the stern disciplinarian the next. What do you think about that?
Well, all I can do is speak to a URC championship, a URC final, and an uneven but still successful season. The Currie Cup is 3 games old. 3 games old. It's time for changes. We'll see what Dobson does against the Bulls. So let's give it a chance. Let's see. I'm not. When he came up, I wasn't sure about him as a coach, but the results made me happy. I don't know about how chummy he is because I don't hang out in Cape Town. Much to a lot of people's disbelief. A lot of people seem to think I live in the Cape Town area. I don't. I live in Pennsylvania. But look, maybe you're correct. Maybe you're not. Let's give it a chance and see. I think that the performance of Province has been beyond suspect. It's been unacceptable, and it needs to be cleaned up quickly.
I don't want to harp on it too much. I'm just thinking about the Stormers in general. They've won the cup. They were in the final, but that was 2 years ago and a year ago. And ever since, there seems to have been a bit of a downward curve. And it's one thing to coach a team to being a champion. It's another thing to coach a team to stay a champion. And that's sort of what I'm referring to. Anyway, just a thought. I'm probably going to get a lot of comments about this, but yeah.
I'm sure you will, but not from the Irish fans.
No, they've moved on now. Thank goodness. So there we go. Not all Irish fans, please, people. Just the more vocal, unpleasant ones. Let's leave it there. Talking about the other teams, the Pumas managed to turn things around. I mean, I never thought that they would be able to go beat the Sharks at Kings Park in Durban after that kind of a loss they suffered at the hands of the Lions at home in Nelspruit. I thought, geez, man, maybe it would be nicer for them to play the Griffins, to turn things around. But they managed to pull off a surprisingly comfortable victory in Durban. That was something to watch for a change.
Yeah, that was a very interesting, exciting game, and it was great to see. People were calling for Jimmy Stonehouse's head last week, and now suddenly that's gone quiet. I mean, people need to calm down here. Look, they have to remember the Griffins, the Griquas, and the Pumas, they make 100 Rand a year in revenue. So, it's not easy to get talent to come there and stay there. I mean, where's Devin Williams? He's not playing the Pumas anymore, is he? He's playing for the Bulls. And that guy was I think he played for the Pumas since 1936, Now he plays for the Bulls, So, I mean, that's, it's tough to keep talent there. And it's always a rotating, a revolving door. And I think Jimmy Stone has done a brilliant job with the Pumas. And people just need to, chill and relax. But yeah, it is a stark contrast to how they got whitewashed last week. And they come back and put on a great performance this week. Now, our first inclination is going to be say, well, it must be the coaching because look at how they turned around. And maybe it is. But then what happened last week? Was it the coaching why they failed so badly? No. The week before, it's like the Pumas weren't even on the pitch. It's like they're sitting on the sideline with the fans watching the game happen. So it's look, rugby union is never a guarantee. It's never look at the Springboks. They had the game won, and then they choke it away with 2 drop goals against Ireland with piss poor defense and the most obvious drop goals coming. And hey, Kieran Frawley did it for him. But it's never guaranteed, it's never sure. Imagine the England, the New Zealand, and the other fans whose hearts are broken about South Africa being the World Cup champions despite only winning by 3 points.
3 games. Never mind. 3
exactly.
Points. Yeah.
No, it's 3 points in for 3 games. That's what I'm talking about. Talk about the narrowest of margins. It's never guaranteed. We expect certain things to happen, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. Listen, the Springboks going to head off to the Rugby Championship, and the Wallabies are they're feeling their oats. Hey, look at us, we're 3-0. Yeah, okay, against Georgia and Wales. Don't get too excited, boys. Don't get too excited. Have fun storming the castle, boys, because it ain't going to be so pretty. Although it looks like the Wallabies are bringing Cordobetti back and Skelton, which could have an impact, but I still don't think they're up to the task.
Well, Skelton is not a rugby player; he's an office building. That guy is the biggest rugby player I've ever seen in my life. After he is just simply scary. He's more scary to me than RG is. Tell you what, he's bigger. No, I tell you what, just quickly on Australia, I'm a little worried about that because we're not good at beating Australia in Australia. Many a banana peel in our history in Australia. I'm just worried about that. And Joe Schmidt is no fool. He's gonna have some sort of a clever plan up his sleeve, I'm sure.
No, Joe Smith is a great coach. I have to concede as a Kiwi, even though I don't like that.
Neither do
but
I.
no, the Wallabies are definitely improved. But I mean, look, I mean, when you show up and the entire building is on fire, anything is an improvement. And that's where the Wallabies were. So not to take anything away from Joe Schmidt, but the Wallabies were a total disaster, just like Wales is currently a total disaster. So anything is the trajectory is upwards from where they started. But and you're right, South Africa doesn't have a great record in Australia. But the best news about the Rugby Championship is while those tests are both in Australia, both the All Blacks tests are in South Africa. And I think that's more important. Got to beat the All Blacks. If we split with Australia, it won't be the end of the world. Of course, I want to sweep, but we got to split with Australia and then sweep the All Blacks, and then we'll win it. But I mean, South Africa's record in the Rugby Championship is not very good, so I'm a little nervous.
I'm thinking sweep Australia, split All Blacks.
No, that's more likely. That's more likely.
Sweep Argentina. I think we've got a good chance to win the championship this year. But to beat the All Blacks, whether it's home or not, and especially in Cape Town, the All Blacks are going to be a very, very equal footing to us, same as what the Irish were in Durban. Ellis Park might be a different story. That's going to be a different game altogether, with altitude once again coming into play and moving from the Cape to Ellis Park, immediately after one another. That's a different ball game. But anyway, we're not talking about that right now. We're talking Currie Cup. Tell me about the Lions. The Lions are now on top of the log, like you said, number one due to points difference. But a young team, but they're playing impressive rugby. From what they did to the Pumas last week, they battled a bit more against the Griquas, which seems to be more, par for the course. But nevertheless, an impressive team there.
I agree 100%. I think the Lions look pretty good now in Currie Cup. I was never a Lions supporter, and I watched them through their years of struggling. I'm like, oh, what a terrible team. Then suddenly they were dominating for a couple of years, and then they kind of fell off again. And now it's like a sine wave with the Lions. They're like this, It's like sitting on a beach, Durban, watching the waves come in. But sometimes they're high, sometimes they're low. But no, right now they're looking pretty good, and they seem to be the team least affected by players coming and going. Maybe because not a lot of Lions are up in the Springboks, maybe that's part of it. But they seem to be the team least affected by it, and they're performing. There's some really exciting players on the Lions. I mean, there's really exciting players. It's good to see them perform well. I love seeing Jaco Fisaki out there. That guy's just exciting. He's that mustache and that look. He looks serious no matter what's happening in the game, and he's a fun guy to watch. Sanina Nohamba, of course, is brilliant. Morne van der Berg now called up to the Springboks. No, it's look, I'm pulling for the Lions. You got to feel bad for them. Like 6 people have the courage to actually go to Ellis Park these days to attend a game because it's so dangerous.
Either brave enough or foolish enough. You don't know which one it is. Yeah, shame.
Yeah. Well, if you can do the park and ride from Rosebank, it's not too bad as long as you catch the right bus.
There's a big thing about at Loftus, the park and rides are for free, but in Joburg you pay an arm and a leg to catch the park and ride now. So
well, that's true, but I'd rather pay the arm and a leg and still have a car to come back to.
Or anything to come back to for that matter. You're right. All right, let's talk about the Currie Cup. You told us last week, this weekend past was the semi-finals for the Major League Rugby tournament. Tell us about what happened there. You said there were quite a lot of action.
Yeah, no, Major League Rugby was a very interesting weekend. 4 semifinals, and 3 of them were just crackers. Brilliant games. Seattle won 30-28 at home over San Diego to advance to the Western Conference Final. And then the one that broke my heart is the South African-laden Houston Sabercats under the direction of Henneke Meyer and the coaches Bote Uman. They choked badly and lost a game which was in their grasp at home against Dallas. Let me put this in perspective for folks, and this is why records don't matter. It's getting in the playoffs and performing there that matters. Dallas, in its 3rd season, first time in the playoffs, won 6 games and lost 10. But they've qualified for that 4th position in their conference because the rest of the teams are kind of, poor. Houston was 14 wins, 2 losses. They rolled over everybody in the season. Now, they did have some injuries. I noticed that Mumson wasn't in the lineup along with some other players. So I don't know what's going on there, but they just didn't perform. It was terrible. This was like watching a silent film where it's all comedy, where the film is sped up and people are dropping things and falling all over the place. It was terrible. The most embarrassing part was that one of the forwards for Houston late in the game now they had 2 attempts down to 5 meters from each side of the pitch with a line out, and they threw it away in one. The other one, they got a penalty called on them, or they knocked it on. So they 2 times in the last 5 minutes, they could have scored and won the game. They failed. They got the ball back and they're driving. It's around midfield, and one of the forwards drops the ball for a grubber kick, and he hits air and runs right past the ball. And so then the Dallas guy picks it up on the fly, bounces right into his arms, runs back and scores a try, and the game's over. So they're out there. And then the other game that was fascinating, which I didn't watch, but I saw the highlights of, that was New England Free Jacks, the defending champions, were hosting the Old Glory DC team, a 7-win, 7-loss, 2-draw team. So they were a middling team, but DC made the playoffs for the first times, and they were credible. It was a 33-29 game. Major League Rugby could have asked for better outcomes and more exciting games than they had this weekend. The problem is that the TV coverage, the only way to watch it was Fox Sports 2, so you had to have a cable to watch it. And so I don't know how large the viewing audience was. And the crowds were, in Seattle was a good crowd. They always have a good crowd in Seattle. And then the crowd in New England was good, but the Houston crowd was middling. It wasn't poor, but it wasn't great. And the only game that really went awry was the New Orleans game against Chicago. Chicago is in the second or third year. They're also a new franchise team. And Chicago won this game. They were the underdogs, but they have a lot of talent on that team, and they won it. So now we'll see Chicago go to Seattle for the conference final. And then we'll see on the other side, it's Dallas going to New England. So all things being equal, I'd expect to see in the final New England versus Seattle, East Coast versus West Coast. I mean, you couldn't get any further east and west. Seattle's on the ocean, and New England's on the ocean in Quincy, Massachusetts. So that's a coast-to-coast thing. The final will be played in San Diego. So it's kind of like the Super Bowl now. They're having it in a certain place. It's not going to be – so you get the home final based on your record for the quarter, or there were no quarterfinals, quarter, semi, but at the final for the championship, it's going to be at a neutral stadium. So San Diego Snapdragon Stadium, which, by the way, since I mentioned Snapdragon Stadium, is where the All Blacks defeated Fiji on Thursday night, which was Friday here. So anyway, Friday in the Pacific. Here's the thing. So it's 47-5. Fiji actually played better than the score looks. They did pretty well. They held their own. The All Blacks didn't run up 100 points on them. But I don't know if you read about this or heard about it. I listened to it, and I had to seek care for the bleeding in my ears listening to the woman who sang New Zealand's national anthem. Oh, good Lord, was that hideous? That was horrible. And I'm not alone in this. I didn't say anything about it initially because, if you complain about someone singing an anthem, especially if it's a woman, then you're a misogynist or you just hate New Zealand. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't say a word. And then I looked at the social media output. Oh my gosh, the Kiwis were apoplectic. They were angry. They were like, oh, stop it. Make it stop. Oh my goodness. It was horrible, man. It's the worst rendition than I've ever heard. It was bad. I mean, I could do better. I could do better than that. Come on.
Well, we had a few clangers in our courses ukulele in the past. I tell you what, but we've seemed to have turned the corner there. Our last couple of renditions been quite rousing. So yeah.
Well, the Loftus rendition was just epic, and it was so classy of her to take the mic and hold it up to encourage the crowd to sing it. That was brilliant. That's the best rendition I've ever heard. The one at Loftus. The one at Durban was good, but the one in Loftus was epic.
Yeah, no, Durban was different crowd as well, different atmosphere. Part of the reason I think we lost that game. Not because the atmosphere matters, but it matters, it's going to affect the Irish, but it does affect the local team. I think if the crowd is singing Sweet Caroline and doing Mexican Wave rather than watching the rugby, ABBA's playing when there's a big scrum going on, that does make a difference. So then you're losing your home ground advantage, where the crowd is fanatical and, baying for blood kind of a thing. But no, the Durban guys were having a day at the beach kind of a thing. That's the difference between Loftus and Durban.
Look, I don't disagree with you, but here's a troubling thing that disturbs me when it comes to rugby union in South Africa at Loftus and in Durban, both, not so much Cape Town, but because I've been there for games, but I've been all those places. But Loftus and Durban, it's as if they think that they've come to a house party and it's the DJ's job to keep people entertained. No, it's not. You want to play music during halftime, fine. But every time that the play stops, you start playing songs, and then they're doing a line out and the music's still playing. It is not conducive to good rugby. Stop the nonsense. Somebody put these DJs aside. They're not needed at Loftus. They're not needed at Durban. They're a distraction and they take away from the game. If we want to listen to Taylor Swift, then we'll poke our eyes out and suffer through Taylor Swift. We don't want to hear that, the stadium. And look, there are some things that are iconic, of course, Sweet Caroline during the game and a couple other songs occasionally when a player's injured, because there's a lot of downtime. That's okay. But just start music. It's like the Sevens. That's one of the things I hated about HSBC Sevens series. Every time you go, and Sevens, the play stops and then it's only stopped for like 15 seconds and they start playing a song and you can't even watch the game. Stop distracting. I didn't pay for that. If I want to go to a nightclub, I'll go to a nightclub. I want to see a rugby match. And it's okay to put music in when there's an extended break or halftime, but not just for the sake of doing it. They need to stop that at Loftus. They need to stop it at Durban too.
I'll tell you what, they did stop it at Loftus. It wasn't that prevalent last week when I was there. I noticed it specifically, and I'll make a point of it. But it was prevalent in the quarterfinal, the semifinal, and even the final. After all that hullabaloo about the DJ, spoiling things, I think they listened to it. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, good.
I think they've improved it now. I can see it because I've been there. We are both at the UFC final, and we know what it's like to have the DJ spoil the atmosphere. And honestly, I think last Friday when I was there, it was better. And I'll make a point of it this weekend to make it to just look at that and see if there's an improvement. I think they've listened, which is a good thing.
I agree. It's look. I mean, music is great. I'm a huge fan of music, and I love all kinds of music. I listen to everything. I listen to rap. I listen to classical. A little bit of pop. I listen to everything, but that's not what the purpose is. And listen, I'm when Sweet Caroline comes at a rugby match, I'm caterwauling with everybody else because
the right time. Yeah,
correct.
It's a funny thing. A couple of years ago, Province against the Bulls at Loftus, huge game. I wonder if there's going to be 2,000 people this weekend. It's such a waste, man.
I was at that game a couple of years ago, Province against the Bulls. It was electric. It was great. It was the biggest crowd I'd seen at Loftus in some time at that point.
I'll tell you what, I think, sorry, I'm now harping on again, but this Currie Cup is going to start gaining momentum as, there's nothing happening until we play against Australia in 3 weeks' time, 2.5 weeks' time. So it's going to have an opportunity to start building up a bit of gears. People are talking about, I'm going to watch this, and we'll start watching it a bit more. And it's actually, like I said, the Bulls especially, I think, has got a very good team this year. I'm excited about seeing what's going to happen there. So, we'll see how it goes.
Well, fair enough. I mean, but what else are people doing this weekend? Watching Biltong dry? I mean, you're going to watch Biltong dry? Come on, go watch rugby.
Well, watching Biltong dry is a South African sport now. It's national pastime. We like that.
I don't know about that. Consuming Biltong, maybe, but watching it dry, I think that's
a science, man. It's a science. You know that. So anyway, thanks, Chris. We'll talk soon. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
This is the Rugby Ascendant Podcast with Envia Velman and Chris Wyatt.